one trust for each of you. To me, estate planning, we want to mirror and reflect your lives as they are, as your lives are now. If you hold up your estate plan, it ought to mirror and reflect what is going on. Well, for us, when we did planning for our couples, husband and wife, before we would separate our spouses, husband and wife, and we would make a trust, one for husband, one for wife. That's already artificial. Why did we do that? To chase around this artificial tax system that used to be $600,000, so we could leverage that credit, so that we could maximize the credit and leave $1.2 million to our family members. That kind of ring a bell for those of you who did an estate planning who are couples? That's what we used to do. But now with a $10,680,000, and by the way, that's indexed for inflation, exemption or credit to leave tax-free, most of us, there's something to aspire to, right? Something to look forward to. So the reason we did these separate trusts went away. And if we don't shift the way that we look at planning, we're left with an outdated system that doesn't really mirror and reflect what is going on today. And one of our clients so we're talking about readjusting our estate plans, and they wrote an article called Freebasing Your Estate Plan. One of my clients who works for Drug Free Hawaii wasn't too happy about the title of this. I didn't realize he worked for Drug Free Hawaii, and he was pretty upset when he was in the meeting. I can't believe they called it Freebasing Your Estate Plan. But this talks about a different tax system that was always there, that could cause us in Hawaii a big problem if we don't look to changing the way we look at estate planning. Anybody know, other than the estate tax system, what tax system was always lying beneath the surface and even our attorneys didn't really say much about it? Who said that? Capital gains. Who said capital gains? Capital gains tax. How many of you own a home in Hawaii? And a lot of us, we have real estate. And what happens to property in Hawaii? Does it go up or does it go down in value? Well, unless it's my leasehold condo that went down from 159 to 50, that's a different story. We can talk about that some other time. But properties tend to appreciate in value. And so what attorneys would tell you to do is to take those properties, split them up, 50% in husband's trust, 50% in wife's trust. Does that kind of sound familiar? For most of you, you might split up the properties and place one in each. Anybody heard of the term stepping up in basis? Step up in basis? I'll give you an example. My grandparents' home was worth $3,000 when they purchased the home. When my grandmother passed away, the home was worth, and they always complained about having to be able to pay the mortgage every month, and I was thinking, oh wow, that doesn't make sense. But it appreciated to $300,000, and my grandmother passed away, and my dad sold the property. There was no capital gains tax because the government gave us what's called a step up in basis, meaning from the price you paid for it, if you pass away, you revalue that basis for capital gains purposes to the date of death value, and if you sell it, there's no capital gains tax. Sound familiar? Well, think about this. If you put half of a house in one spouse's trust and half of the house in another spouse's trust, and the first spouse passes away, you revalue that half of the property at the date of death of the first spouse. And then let's say the second spouse lives another 30 years and you reevaluate it, and our properties appreciate every 7 years, they double. The basis is set for the first half way down here, and at the second spouse's death, half up here. What do you think would happen to the children's what is the tax effect to the children if they sold it? Would there be a capital gains tax? There would be, because of the difference in appreciation. So that's
not true, because when the first, even though they got the step-up basis to the surviving spouse, when that surviving spouse dies, they own the whole property, right?
Oh, see, that's a good question. So the question is, well, doesn't the surviving spouse get the whole property? That's the whole intent, right? I want to leave my house to my surviving spouse. Well, when lawyers get a hold of it, your plan, your personal plan, they put half of the property in one trust, and that trust doesn't go to the surviving spouse. It stays here, right? And then the basis gets frozen here. And a lot of people think, oh, it's mine. Well, you know what's funny is, so you have one trust for a spouse, and that spouse passes away. Let's pick on the husband. His husband passes away. Beneficiaries down here, waiting to receive what's in that trust, right? Waiting to receive, waiting for their dad and mom to pass away to receive. Mom's still living, and mom's wondering, well, this should be mine, right? Because we're a partnership, and we left everything for each other. And then the kids say, hey, that's an irrevocable trust. Now I'm a beneficiary. This trust became irrevocable, and I'm a beneficiary now. It's irrevocable. So you have two beneficiaries, this surviving spouse, and then the children. So the children say, you better not spend from this trust because I am a beneficiary now. I've had two cases where the kids, they call them successor or remainder beneficiaries, call me up. Hey, one instance was a niece of an estate plan because this couple did not have children. The wife still living, they had separate trusts, and the niece was entitled to $5,000 when both passed away. So I was representing the husband and wife. She hired a lawyer to write to me to ask for an accounting every year of the husband's trust to make sure that they did not spend that trust because that's mine now. I don't think that was the intention, right? Do you think? Yes.
But doesn't the wording in the trust state that it's for the use of the surviving spouse?
Yes.
For the needs and all that, basic needs.
Yes,
right?
basic needs. Well, are you using for basic needs? How do I know for sure you're using? Do you really need that food? I'm kidding. But you see how it gets unclear. And so how do we shift now because of the capital gains problem, because of the confusion about who is the beneficiary? Because I do believe that our kids' generation, and I have twin 12-year-old daughters, so I see it, and we're spoiling them, and I'm really sad and sorry about that. I apologize to the world. Because someday they're going to be out there. Their idea of life is different than Percy said that here, if you were here before. I think our generation really had a different idea of whose it is, and there's a huge sense of entitlement, an entitlement wave coming over. In fact, we were fortunate to go on a cruise, and I couldn't believe the bill had some money taken out for the gift that we were to give the workers. I was thinking, well, that's nice of them to tell us how much we're giving them. But then I realized, well, if they took it from me, it's not a gift. So you see, we have this sense of entitlement. So we really have to be careful. When I first started estate planning, we never had to worry about how the beneficiaries acted when we're not here, right? So the capital gains tax is looming. There's a complexity and lack of clarity about who the beneficiary is. So there's an opportunity for those of us who are married to switch gears, to go after the capital gains tax problem and create other types of trusts like a joint trust. I only bring this up because a lot of our clients are very interested in that because it's clear who it belongs to. Me and my wife, and that's it. It's much more flexible in that if we need to alter or change the instructions of the trust, we can change it. It's so much simpler as a joint trust. If you can imagine, if you're older, you've created separate trusts and one spouse passes away and the survivors are a little more tired, a little more forgetful, and all of a sudden your accountant says, hey, by the way, since your spouse passed away, we have to get a separate ID number for this trust. Okay. And we have to file a separate trust income tax return for this trust now. Okay. Now we have to be careful of which trust you spend money from and who pays the expenses, and it gets very cumbersome. And if the underlying intent is that it was for both of us anyway, we really don't need the complexity. We're really looking to, lawyers can really complicate lives, right? We have books and books and books of how to, it's really fun to complicate lives. And our role is to really simplify your life, I believe. And so a joint trust is good because it's more flexible, more simple, and it can cure the capital gains tax problem. Any questions about that? The tax law and the shifting of the way we look at planning? There's another law that came out in Hawaii. We're one of 2 states that have this law, and it has to do with driving. How many of you drive? When you drive, do you notice pedestrians? Do you notice bicycle riders, motorcyclists, people on cell phones? Do you notice that the lanes are narrowing? Do you notice that the cars are getting bigger? Do you notice that the city's main idea is to pave? Have your roads been paved lately? Have your roads? That's their idea. They're gonna pave all the roads, and there's so many potholes. My wife had 3 flat tires in 3 weeks because they're working on the roads so much. It's really tough to get to work these days, and there are 10,000 lawyers in Hawaii, and most of them wear coats. I don't wear a coat, I just wear a tie, so I'm safe. I don't go to the court, but the ones with the coats, they go to court. Right, Rod? I used to work for him over there. He always wore a coat every day. I go, wow, he looks so cool in that coat. Those are litigators. They love to sue people and take your home away from you. I'm sorry, you're not a litigator anymore, right? Retired litigator. So I would say litigators are like termites. They go everywhere. So our job is to build concrete pillars so they cannot go after your property. Sorry, Rod, that's not entirely true. If we're driving down the road and our home is in trust, pre-2012, these, and you hit a pedestrian, moped, bicyclist, motorcyclist, someone on a cell phone, they could sue to take your property away, your house. Now, if you hold your home in trust and you do it the right way, the state says if you say, I don't want to get sued, I don't want these lawyers to come after my house, that's all you have to say is, I don't want you guys to sue me to take my house away, we can protect your home. It's a really nice law. We call it a creditor protection deed. It's for husband and wife, and a lot of people hold their property out of trust as husband and wife. That gives you creditor protection. Well, the one danger of that is if you don't put it into trust, if both of you pass away, you risk a probate system. Probate is just a system to clear title. Have you heard of probate? So if you own real estate in Hawaii and you both pass away, you go through this probate system. It's not the end of the world, but you have to go to court. And a lot of things that we do is to help avoid court, because this is your estate. This is a family matter. Family matters should stay within the family. The definition of a trust is building relationships. Did you know that? Because people ask me, what is a trust? Is it like a corporation? It's really building relationships. Who's important to you? Who's going to be making decisions for you, and who's going to receive your things? That's what you're building in a trust. Well, we want to be able to give you the opportunity to make those decisions and not let anybody else tell you who should have your things and who should take over these things. And so this creditor protection deed, well, if you hold it husband and wife and you don't put it in trust, we risk probate. Now we can get creditor protection and hold it in trust to avoid probate. So it's a really nice law. We're one of 2 states that have this rule. Any questions on that? Yes?
You have a trust. Does the property's deed or the name have to be named in the deed? I mean, because I have a deed, I have a trust, but the property itself has to be named.
The property has to actually be, the question is, does, you have a trust, does the property have to
Yeah.
be titled to the trust?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, we want to connect things to the trust, otherwise it won't fit nicely. So actually we have to prepare a deed to transfer it to the trust. And by doing that, we put the language in to get creditor protection. Good question. Any questions on that? Those are the two major significant changes in the law. Well, you might ask, well, this estate tax exemption, anybody wonder, well, if the government did change it to give us 10,680,000, right, going up index, what's to say they're not going to take it back again, right? Because they could change their minds. Does that cross your mind? It's an artificial system. They could just as easily take it away. I believe for three reasons, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I believe for three reasons that it's not going to change. First of all, this estate tax exemption that they gave us never went down, always went up. From pre-Civil War time, 600,000, 650, 750, 850, 1.5, 3.5, 5 million, 340 this year. Never dropped. Went away in 2012 and President Bush was successful in switching our whole system around on us. The second reason I believe that the estate tax exemption is only going to increase for a while is it's such an emotional tax. It's called an estate tax, right? When we were at the IRS, it was an estate tax. And when you think of estates, you think of rolling hills and vast properties. President Bush, he didn't really, and I'm not being political, but he did not like the estate tax. He didn't want him or his friends to pay an estate tax. And so he hired this word guy, this guy who's a PhD in words, Frank Luntz. He wrote a book. He said, this is the most significant thing I've ever done in my professional career. What he did was he changed the name of estate tax to death tax. Death tax. Then he asked us, how many of you think that you should pay a death tax when you die? Because and 86% of us said, that's un-American, that's not fair. We shouldn't have to visit the caretaker and the taxman on the same day, right? 86% of us voted to get rid of this death tax. Anybody want to guess what percentage of us pay a death tax? Ever? 1 to 2%. So 86% of us voted to repeal a system that less than 2% of us paid, to switch it to a capital gains tax system, where most of us would have to bear the burden of if we sold appreciating property. And by the way, they're raising the capital gains tax rates. Do you see that happening for some of you? So it's such an emotional tax, I don't believe it's going to change. And the third reason I believe it's not going to change is Congress people. Do you get the sense that our people in Congress are altruistic, acting on behalf of the good of others? And if you look at them, I think most of them are millionaires, right? 3 of them are not. I think they're billionaires. Would they change the law to change it so that they would be subject to an estate tax? I'm not sure. So those are the 3 reasons why I think we're safe. And it's a good law. The government just gave that to us. Sound okay? Now, if I know we have to... What time do we have to get out of here? 3 o'clock, okay. So we've done an estate plan. What I really wanted to spend time on is to ask you to consider shifting the way, if you haven't already, the way we look at estate planning. Because most of you have gone to an estate planning attorney and they've crafted a nice estate plan for you, right? And it looks something like this. Isn't it in a binder? Most of yours is in a binder. And it has papers that look like this. What color is this? White and black and white. Well, that's the first sign to me that we're not doing this quite right. Because no one's life is black and white. Everybody's life is unique and textured and dynamic. And lawyers, take a hold of your estate plan. And before We do anything. We tell you what to do and how to do it, and we write these black and white papers, and what do we bleach out from you? Your intent, your ideas, your wishes, your what do you hope for. And the underlying foundation for these trusts might be really nice, but if we don't help you pass on the foundation for your plan, what do you think will happen to plans? If we don't help pass on your unique, dynamic, and textured intention for your families. And that's what we've been doing, and the statistics are revealing that 30% of people do estate plans. And do you know what the failure rate for estate plans are? You go to a lawyer, they write these things for you. What do you think, how many of these fail? Failure, I mean, your intentions for how the assets are used or how your healthcare is taken care of, your intentions, how many of those are followed through, actually? What percent do you think? There's a 70% failure rate of the 30%. Get this, 2% of the failures were tax related and probate avoidant related. Only 2%. 98% of the failures were relational, meaning people misspent their assets, or they received it and we weren't clear, and an ex-spouse or creditor took it away. A spendthrift beneficiary spent their money. All these, or they fought about it and the lawyers got rich. All of these things happened not in the lawyer's ability to get it to your beneficiaries at the least cost, tax-wise, and minimizing, avoiding probate. It's in the receiving of the assets and the underlying, this came from a book. They did a study on estate planning, and the whole idea of the book is we have to start taking our clients much further. We bear a lot of responsibility for that because lawyers believe it's the form of things. And so when you go see the lawyer, we craft these forms which are great. They're black and white. They work in a court of law. They're very clear about who should act on your behalf. But if we don't take it further to humanize it, there's a huge risk for our families because we're not just passing on assets. We are emotional and intentful human beings, right? So we need to help our clients pass those ideas on as well. Color in your estate plan, so to speak. So it's all communication. End of life decision. I gave you 3 pages here, and we really work hard to help pass on our intentions. And if you've done your estate plan, there is another step to estate planning which I would encourage you to start getting involved in. And it's out of this booklet that we just created these. And at the end, we're gonna do some exercises with this. That's why I gave you a free pen, and I'm gonna ask you some questions. It's not a quiz. We don't you don't turn it in. We don't grade it. So there's no stress for that. End of life decision. How many of you seen an end of life decision? What does it look like?
Well, it was quite emotional.
It's emotional, right?
Yeah.
What does it look like? When you had to make when you had to mark or sign it, what does the end of life decision look like?
Well, you just have to.
Did it look like this?
I didn't have to sign it.
Oh, you didn't have to sign it, but you went through it, huh? How many have seen papers that look like this? So this is part of the advance directive, right? And it is really tough to think about. So the question the lawyers will ask you, if you're in a coma, not going to get better, do you want to be put on a respirator ventilator? And then there's A or B, right? You check A or B. It's a multiple choice question. And I don't believe anybody's life is a multiple choice question. It's unique and texture and dynamic. So we're already setting you up for failure. And what are the common words we use when we talk about these things? If I were a what, I want you to pull the what. If I were a vegetable, I want you to pull the plug, right? Well, this is a vegetable, right? Nobody's a vegetable. And so already we're using really the wrong words, so we have a hard time relaying our intentions to people. And what is the risk? Statistically, only 30% follows estate planning of people make an end-of-life decision. Only 30% of those are honored and respected when it comes about. That's 1 out of 15. Remember Mrs. Okada a couple years ago? Mrs. Okada, she was an older woman at Queens. I just talked to a palliative care nurse who was involved in that case yesterday. And it's, to me, very sad, because our role for our clients, I believe, part of our mission is to help people make informed decisions. Help our clients communicate those ideas to the loved ones and the ones who are going to be carrying out the wishes of our clients, so that our wishes and intentions are honored and respected. Isn't that what we're asking our professionals to do for us? I believe that our clients not only ask us to write the estate plan for them to help them pass on their legacy, but you're asking us to help speak clearly for you when you cannot speak anymore. Well, I take that pretty seriously, because boy, when I talk to my wife and my 2 kids, I can never understand what they're saying. We're right there. The people ask me, oh, do you do like in the movies where when someone dies, you open up the will and you have the family around? And I say, oh, you get the cat, you get the dog. And I say, I never do that. They say, well, you're not a real lawyer. I say, well, the best time to do that is when we're here, so we can communicate our understanding together, so we're all on the same page. Estate planning, end-of-life decision-making, our healthcare concerns, all of this that we're talking about, it's the same, helping people make informed decisions, encouraging people to communicate those ideas to their loved ones and those who are going to be following those wishes, so that we can have our wishes and intentions honored and respected. While Mrs. Higa 2 years ago was in Queens, she made an end-of-life decision in 1980. And she said, if I'm in a coma and I'm not going to get better, I don't want to be put on a respirator. That's what she said. It was documented in a legal document. And when she went to Queens, the doctor said, yeah, she's in a coma, she's not going to get better. And so they were ready to withdraw or not put her on a respirator and ventilator. Death was imminent in the doctor's opinion. And then the brother came in, Scotty Koga, and he said, gee, I really don't think that's right. I don't think that that's what her intentions are. And so she's now, do you remember this case? She's now in a nursing facility on a respirator. I don't know what is the right answer or the wrong answer. I don't know if they followed her wishes. I don't know if anybody really sat down with her to really help ask questions so that she could make an informed decision. I don't believe that anybody suggested to her that she communicate her ideas so that everybody was on the same page, so that her wishes really were honored and respected. I don't think that happened. The palliative care nurse that I spoke with yesterday said, Steve, we're really working hard, and so we created this heartfelt advanced care plan for people to take the opportunity to look for themselves. It's like a swimming pool. You kind of mark the box, then you get into the deeper realm of our understanding of what quality of life means to each of us, because it's different for each of us, so we can make informed decisions. But she said, if we do it in ICU for the first time, have this conversation, that's a really bumpy place to do it, don't you think? You're really sick, you're going to die, and they're asking you these questions. And this one patient that she was talking to, she started asking her the questions that are in this booklet that we have for our clients. And the patient said, what, are you telling me I'm dying? Well, at that point, the patient shut down and was not able to think about anything. And so we're asking our clients to start, the medical profession calls it way upstream. Well, we call ourselves the first step. Either you're clergy, you're a financial planner, an estate planning attorney, we need to raise the level of our responsibility and accountability to each of you in the community to help you normalize this process because our medical care is advancing to such a rate that it's keeping us going far well beyond what we believe quality of life is. And so that's what this is. And why am I so interested in this part of it is my dad, if I could share a story. My dad was an internist cardiologist. And before he retired, he came home with a booklet much like this. And I opened it up and it had some charts that the line was going down. Boom, he closed it immediately. He said, "You weren't supposed to see that." I go, "Okay." Then he came back later and he said, "Oh, well, I was going to tell you guys anyway." So he sat my 3 brothers and I down and my mom down and he told us he had an incurable anemia that turned into leukemia. I don't really quite, I'm not a doctor. That is incurable. And he said, with this illness, I have 4 months to live, he said. And I was thinking, well, what's the option here? Where's the options that you give your patients? No option, right? He said, I have 4 months to live, and with this disease, I'm going to go into a coma. Okay. When I do, he said, I made an end-of-life decision, and I don't want to be put on a respirator and ventilator. And at the time, I said, I understand that, because we were going around nursing facilities. My dad and I, him from a medical standpoint, how does it feel to go through this? Me from a how do you mark the box point of view. It was a nice experience for me to work with my dad. So I thought I knew I was arrogant in my thinking. Well, we were able to keep him with us for 2 years, and he said it a couple times. But boy, I'll never forget. You ever have those snapshot moments, like a picture? This was a really eye-opening experience for me. He was in his bedroom, and we were around the bed, the hospice nurse, and he slipped into his coma. And right away, my reaction was, I was going to tell the hospice nurse, put him on a respirator, because I didn't want to see him go. It shook me up, it really startled me, because I do this for work. And so that saying, I used to say that old Oriental saying. My wife said, don't use Oriental, it's Asian. Anyway, actually Eleanor Roosevelt said it, I found out. But if you ever remember the old saying that you can only test the strength of tea if you put it in boiling water? You ever heard that? You ever take a tea bag and put it in tap water? Nothing happens, right? When we're sitting down and we're calm, nothing happens. But the boiling water moment is when we're in a crisis, to see what our understanding of our loved ones' wishes are. We don't want to really test it at that time. And that's why we have so many failures. Well, you might ask me, well, Mrs. Okada, she made a legal decision. How come the hospital didn't honor that, right?
The health directive, right?
Health directive, it's legal, it's legislated.
And then you have a physician directive as well.
You have post, right? It's legal. Well, I asked my brother, who is a physician, and he said, well, Steve, I know, we treat the living. Do you know what that means? It becomes an economic issue. Because who's going to sue the hospital? The people who are living. And so we don't want to rely on that system to have our wishes honored and respected. And by the way, when we make a decision, for most of you, you're okay, you're healthy, you can communicate. And probably the only question most of you can answer today is if you're walking across the street, boom, you get hit by a bus and you're in a coma. That's not what's going to happen, probably. There are stages in our life, from what I hear these palliative care guys say, well, when we're okay, we start thinking about it. And the second stage is when we get a little more tired, we might have a chronic illness, we find ourselves more in the hospital. And then ICU, that's kind of the phases of our lives. We don't want to start this conversation then. In my opinion, we as professionals really need to help each person normalize this conversation so it's not so difficult later to start earlier on. Every conversation, mortality and incapacity, they're really tough to think about. And it's not enough to just go get a trust done and close it up and hide it away until something happens. So in our office, we really focus on helping our clients pass on intentions. We created a booklet called A Heartfelt Will. Anybody heard the saying, there are only two lasting legacies you can leave? One is roots and the other wings. Two lasting bequests. Cash is intended to be spent, but our legacy, roots, where did you come from? What personal experiences did you have and memories did you have that shaped your life? Where did we come from? That ties us together as human beings. And every human being, I believe, has such a unique, adventurous life. There's, like Mark Twain said, he's never met a dull life. No one's life is dull, and we want to be able to pass that on. And they've done studies. People want to hear about your life. So this booklet is intended to give our clients the opportunity to write our roots down. First time you ran away from home and hid in the closet, experiences. And I'm still mad at my parents for not looking for me. Because I remember it was so hot in that closet. That's something else too. And then wings. What do you hope for your family? What healthcare, from healthcare to education, what kind of traditions do you want to see continued? What does a meaningful life look like to your family? You know what this is? I call this the operating manual for the trust. So if we just have the trust that says use in legalese, which is we're illiterate as a profession, how would our children and the people who are supposed to follow our instructions in the trust really understand what we mean? Because a lawyer wrote it. And so this is intended to give you the opportunity for our clients, and you can get several of these different types of books on the internet or at the bookstore, and I would encourage each of you to give yourself permission to take the time to do this, because a lot of times we think, oh, it doesn't matter, or I'm too busy, and I believe it's just as important as the estate plan. Personal assets, we created what's called a personal property memorandum. Keepsakes, we have jewelry and artwork and furniture. One of the saddest experiences I experienced when my parents passed away, and my mom is from upstate New York, and my dad's from here, and we put all their stuff, you know, their jewelry, artwork, stuff on the table, and one of my brothers said, hey, let's go around the table and everybody tell a story about one of these things. I said, great, that's a great idea. And then we just stared at them. We didn't have any idea. They're from New York, they're from here, and then we pack them away and put them in a box, right? Because the meaning gets lost. Some people take these things, if we don't pass on the meaning, and they sell them at a pawn shop. My brother-in-law is a collector of these things. He would love to have it, but he wouldn't know the meaning behind it. I remember Mary Poppins. How many of you have seen Mary Poppins? Mary Poppins. The movie's the same. I've seen it about 20 times because my kids are girls and they're 12. But I saw the play, and the guy held up a coin. He said, you know, the worth of this coin is same to you, worth same to you, to you, to you, to you, same. And he turned the coin around and he said, the value of this coin, entirely different to you, to you, to you. That's what we want to pass on. Your personal idea of value, whether it's your health care, whether it's end-of-life decision, whether it's when you write your trust, what do you value? Does that sound like a nice, good step? To whatever degree you feel comfortable doing, I would encourage you to. People want to know. Any questions about that? We have about 5 minutes. Let's start, because I've noticed that when I hand out the books, I call my office the pause room, P-A-U-S-E. We pause, we sit down, we take a look at everybody's stuff, we make good decisions, and when we leave, this life certainly tugs at us and pushes at us, and we're off to the races in this modern world. So you have a pen, that pen? Does everybody have a pen? It's a gift from me to you. Please keep it and remember it. No, I'm kidding. So let's go through these. Yes, you need a paper. Here you go. Oh, you need one too? What? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So we got 5 more minutes. Oh, we don't give. We can. I only got one. I only got one for me. The booklet. Yeah. Okay, real quickly. I have to make sure what one is because definitely want treatment, definitely do not want treatment. Just as an experience, let's do this to end with. If you were no longer able to recognize or interact with family or friends, would you definitely want treatment or definitely not want treatment or something in the middle? Go ahead and mark it. You don't have to show your neighbors. Do you? Second one, if you were not able to think or speak clearly, would you definitely want treatment or, nah, I don't really want treatment? If you were not able to, oh, like treatment, like surgery, like respirators, ventilators, painkillers. Now, you see what you're asking me right now? What do you mean by that? Well, that's way beyond A or B, right? Now you're starting to think about what to ask, right? That's why we're doing this. I'm not a doctor, and we don't know your situation, so we're pretending right now. What if you were not able to walk but able to get around in a wheelchair? What if you were no longer able to go outside and remain at home all day? Let's turn the page. What if you're in severe, untreatable pain most of the time? Would you want treatment or not want treatment? Severe discomfort most of the time. Want treatment? Not want treatment. On a feeding tube. Kidney dialysis. I'll end you with this. My neighbor, and I think, where is he? We grew up together, me and my neighbor. She was on kidney dialysis. She finally said, you know, I really don't want this anymore. She made that decision. And so she made that decision and she passed away 3 days later. So these are things that come up. Last one, must use a breathing machine to keep you alive. See, these are the kinds of things that we want to start thinking about now. Anyway, we have a more complete booklet if you want that. I'm happy to give that to you if you call my office. Thank you very much for spending this hour with me. And I think we're done. I think we have to leave. Bye-bye.